I was cutting my son's 5th birthday cake when a stranger grabbed my wrist and said 4 words that destroyed everything I believed about my life. "You stole my child." The knife slipped from my hand, clattering onto the dinosaur-themed tablecloth as 20 kids stared at us. The woman's grip was firm, not painful, but desperate. Her eyes weren't angry. They were broken. My name is Sarah, and until that moment, I thought I knew my story perfectly. Single mother, adopted my beautiful son Ethan when he was just 2 days old, built our entire world together, one bedtime story at a time. But this woman, this complete stranger, who had just crashed my son's birthday party, was about to show me that everything I knew was a lie. She was maybe 35, with dark hair pulled back in a messy bun and clothes that looked like she'd slept in them. Her name was Meredith, though I wouldn't learn that for another few minutes. Right then, she was just the woman whose hand was still wrapped around my wrist, while my son's birthday cake sat half-cut between us, chocolate frosting smearing on the plastic knife. "Mommy, why did you stop cutting the cake?" Ethan's voice piped up from behind me. My beautiful boy with his hazel eyes and that infectious laugh that could light up any room. He was wearing his favorite T-Rex shirt, the one with the hole in the shoulder that I kept meaning to fix, but he wouldn't let me because he said it made the dinosaur look like it was really roaring. "Just a minute, baby," I managed to say, my voice surprisingly calm considering my heart was hammering against my ribs. The woman's eyes moved to Ethan, and her whole face crumpled. She let go of my wrist and pressed both hands to her mouth. A sound escaped her that I'll never forget. It wasn't quite a sob, wasn't quite a gasp. It was the sound of recognition, of loss, of 5 years of grief hitting someone all at once. "That's him," she whispered through her fingers. "That's my baby." The party was at Riverside Park, the one with the big oak trees and the blue playground that looked like a pirate ship. We'd rented the pavilion, set up a bounce house, hired a face painter. There were balloons everywhere in Ethan's favorite colors, green and orange. My sister Vera had spent all morning helping me set up while my father Dennis tested the speakers for the music. It was supposed to be perfect. It was perfect until this moment. "Ma'am, I think you're confused," I said, stepping slightly in front of Ethan. My protective instincts kicked in hard. "This is my son. I've raised him since he was 2 days old." She shook her head violently. No, you don't understand. I gave birth to a boy 5 years ago, March 16th, 3:47 in the morning. They told me he died. They told me he died during delivery, but he didn't. That's him. Look at him. He has my father's eyes, my mother's chin, that birthmark behind his left ear. My father had the exact same one. My blood went cold. Ethan did have a small crescent-shaped birthmark behind his left ear. I'd kissed it 1,000 times during bedtime snuggles. It was just one of those unique things about him, like how he couldn't sleep without his stuffed elephant, or how he always ate his vegetables first to get them over with. "You need to leave." My father Dennis stepped forward, all 6'2" of him, still intimidating at 68 years old. "You're scaring the children." But Meredith wasn't looking at him. She was pulling out her phone with shaking hands, scrolling frantically through photos. "Please, just look. Please. I'm not crazy. I've been searching for 5 years." She turned the phone toward me. It was an ultrasound image, dated March 15th, 5 years ago, the day before Ethan's birthday. Then another photo, her in a hospital gown, heavily pregnant, holding up a tiny blue outfit with dinosaurs on it. The same pattern as the sleeper I'd found in Ethan's adoption papers, the one the agency said his birth mother had left for him. "Lots of people have babies on March 16th, I said, but my voice was wavering now. "Lots of babies have birthmarks." "At Riverside General?" she asked. "At 3:47 in the morning? They told me he lived for 5 minutes. 5 minutes. But they never let me hold him, never let me see him, said it would be too traumatic." The other parents at the party were starting to gather their children, shooting concerned looks our way. Vera had her hand on my shoulder, squeezing gently. The face painter had stopped mid-butterfly on a little girl's cheek. Everyone was watching this unfold like a car crash in slow motion. "Sarah," Vera whispered in my ear, "maybe we should hear her out, away from the kids." But Meredith wasn't done. She pulled up another photo, this one of a medical bracelet. "Baby boy Wilson. March 16th, 3:47 a.m., Riverside General, Ward 3B. My adoption papers flashed through my mind. Bright Horizons Private Adoption Agency, emergency placement, birth mother surrender at 4:15 a.m. Same date, same hospital. Only 28 minutes. After this, woman said her baby supposedly died. Ethan tugged on my shirt. "Mommy, is everything okay? Can we have cake now?" I looked down at my son, my whole world, the little boy I'd raised since he was 2 days old, the boy I'd walked with for hours when he had colic, whose first word was mama, who learned to ride a bike just last month and skinned both his knees but got right back on because he was brave like that. Then I looked at this woman, this stranger who wasn't acting like a stranger at all. She was looking at Ethan the way I looked at him, like he was her whole universe, like she'd been searching for him in every face she passed for 5 years. "What do you want?" I asked her quietly. "I want the truth," she said, tears streaming down her face now. "I want to know what happened to my baby." That morning had started like every birthday in our house. Ethan jumped on my bed at 6 a.m. shouting, "I'm 5, I'm 5, I'm a whole hand now," while holding up all 5 fingers like he'd just discovered fire. This was our life. Our beautiful, predictable, wonderfully chaotic life that I'd built so carefully since the day I brought him home. I need to back up and tell you how we got here, to this party, to this moment that changed everything. My name is Sarah Martinez, and I adopted Ethan when I was 27 years old. I'd just gotten promoted to senior architect at my firm, had bought my first house, and knew with absolute certainty that I wanted to be a mother. The traditional route hadn't worked out. My ex-fiancé decided 3 weeks before our wedding that kids weren't in his 5-year plan, or his 10-year plan, or any plan really. So I decided to do it alone. Bright Horizons Private Adoption Agency came highly recommended. They specialized in emergency placements, babies who needed homes immediately. The process usually took years, they warned me, but I was prepared to wait. Then, just 3 months after my application was approved, my phone rang at 2 in the morning. "Sarah, this is Janet from Bright Horizons. We have a situation. A newborn boy, 2 days old. The birth mother has signed away her rights. He needs a home immediately. Can you be at Riverside General in an hour?" I threw on clothes, grabbed the emergency baby bag I'd packed just in case, and drove through empty streets with my heart in my throat. When the nurse placed him in my arms, this tiny, perfect human with his eyes squeezed shut and his fists balled up like he was ready to fight the world, I fell completely apart. Happy tears, scared tears, overwhelmed tears, all of them at once. "His birth mother left this for him," Janet had said, handing me a small bag with a dinosaur sleeper and a note that just said, "Please love him the way I wish I could." And God, did I love him. Through colic and teething, through his obsession with putting everything in his mouth, through the terrible twos that lasted until he was almost 4, through his first day of preschool when he cried for 10 minutes, then forgot I existed the moment he saw the playground, through every fever, every scraped knee, every "why is the sky blue?" question at bedtime when I just wanted 5 minutes of quiet. My family embraced him completely. My sister Vera became Aunt V, the fun aunt who always brought too much candy and let him stay up past bedtime when she babysat. My father, Dennis, transformed from a stern former Marine into the softest grandfather you've ever seen, carrying Ethan on his shoulders everywhere, teaching him how to whistle, how to tie his shoes, how to be brave even when you're scared. "That boy saved your father," my mother used to say before she passed 2 years ago, gave him permission to be soft. The birthday party had been in planning for weeks. Ethan wanted a dinosaur theme, specifically T-Rex because according to him, they were the kings of everything. We'd invited his whole preschool class, the neighbors, kids from his swimming lessons. The bounce house was shaped like a volcano. The cake, which took me 3 attempts to get right, was shaped like a dinosaur egg, with "Happy 5th Birthday, Ethan" written in green frosting. That morning, while setting up the pavilion at Riverside Park, Vera had been stringing lights while I arranged the gift table. "Remember when you called me crying because you didn't know what different cries meant?" She laughed, standing on a ladder. "Now look at you, super mom extraordinaire." I still don't know what half his cries mean, I admitted, tying balloons to the chairs. Yesterday, he cried because his sandwich was cut into triangles instead of squares. That's not about understanding. That's just being 5. My father arrived with the coolers, already wearing the birthday boy's grandpa shirt Ethan had picked out for him. Where's my grandson? I've got his special birthday present in the truck. Dad, please tell me it's not another drum set. It's a bike, he grinned. Every boy needs a bike when he turns 5. It's a rule. The party started at 2 p.m. Kids arrived in waves, parents dropping them off with presents and picking up spots in the shade to chat. Ethan was in his element, the center of attention, his laugh carrying across the park as he played with his friends. The face painter had a line of eager kids. The bounce house was pure chaos and squealing joy. I stood there watching him, my heart so full it actually hurt. 5 years of being his mom, 5 years of the greatest adventure of my life. When Vera started bringing out the cake, when everyone gathered around to sing, when Ethan's face lit up seeing all those candles, I thought, this is it. This is what perfect looks like. Then I picked up the knife to cut the cake, and that woman's hand wrapped around my wrist. You stole my child, she said again, louder this time, and the entire party ground to a halt. Parents pulled their children closer. The bouncy house deflated into silence as kids stopped jumping to stare. Even the birds seemed to quiet down, as if nature itself was holding its breath to see what would happen next. Ma'am, you need to calm down, I said, trying to keep my voice steady for Ethan's sake. He was pressed against my leg now, his small fingers gripping my jeans. This is my son's birthday party. Whatever you think is happening here, you're wrong. Wrong? Meredith's voice cracked. Look at him. Really look at him. The way his left eyebrow arches higher than the right when he's confused. That's exactly what my father's did. The way his nose crinkles when he smiles. That's mine. That birthmark behind his ear, my father had it, my grandfather had it, I have it. She pushed her hair back to reveal an identical crescent-shaped mark. My stomach dropped. I had noticed these things about Ethan, cataloged them as his unique features, the things that made him mine. But hearing her list them like evidence in a case made my skin crawl. Lots of people have similar features. My father Dennis stepped between us, his voice carrying that military authority he rarely used anymore. Now I'm asking you politely to leave before I call the police. Call them, Meredith shot back. Maybe they'll help me get my stolen baby back. Nobody stole anyone, I said, my own anger rising now. I adopted Ethan legally through Bright Horizons agency. I have all the paperwork. The birth mother surrendered her rights. I never surrendered anything. Meredith was shaking now. I gave birth at Riverside General on March 16th at 3:47 a.m. They told me my baby died 5 minutes later. They told me his heart gave out. But they never let me see him, never let me hold him. Do you know what that does to a mother? To be told your child is dead but never get to say goodbye? She pulled out her phone again, scrolling frantically. Look, here's my admission paperwork. March 15th, 11 p.m. High-risk pregnancy, early labor. Another swipe. Here's the death certificate they gave me. Baby boy Wilson, March 16th, 3:52 a.m. I looked at the screen to spite myself. The timestamp made my blood run cold. According to my adoption papers, Ethan's birth mother had surrendered him at 4:15 a.m., only 23 minutes after this woman's baby supposedly died. Same hospital? Vera asked quietly, reading over my shoulder. Same ward, Meredith confirmed. Ward 3B, the high-risk unit. This is insane, I said, but my voice sounded hollow even to me. Babies aren't just switched around like packages. There are systems, protocols. Unless someone bypassed them, Meredith said. She pulled up another photo, this one of her in the hospital bed, clearly post-delivery, her face puffy and exhausted. This was taken at 4:20 a.m. Look at my eyes. Do I look like a woman who just voluntarily gave up her baby? She looked destroyed. Even in a still photo, you could see the devastation written across her face. Mommy, who is this lady? Ethan's small voice cut through the tension. Why is she showing you pictures? Before I could answer, Meredith dropped to her knees in front of him. Dennis moved to intervene, but she wasn't reaching for Ethan, just kneeling there at eye level, tears streaming down her face. "Hi, sweetheart," she said softly. "I'm sorry I'm interrupting your party. You must be the birthday boy." Ethan nodded shyly, still pressed against me. "I'm 5 today." 5 is a big number. Meredith smiled through her tears. "I bet you're really smart. Do you like dinosaurs?" She gestured at his T-Rex shirt. "They're my favorite," Ethan said, warming up slightly, "especially T-Rex because they're the kings." "My little boy loved dinosaurs too," Meredith whispered, and something in her voice made everyone nearby take a step back. It was raw grief, the kind that 5 years hadn't dulled at all. "Where is he?" Ethan asked innocently. "I lost him," Meredith said simply. "The day he was born." Vera grabbed my arm. "Sarah, what if she's telling the truth? What if something happened at that hospital?" "Things like this don't happen," I insisted, but I was remembering now. Janet from the adoption agency had seemed frazzled that night, rushing through paperwork, constantly checking her phone. The nurse who handed me Ethan had seemed nervous, kept asking if anyone had followed me to the hospital. "They do happen." Meredith stood up slowly. "I researched it afterward. Babies declared dead but never found. Adoption agencies with too perfect timing. Nurses and social workers who suddenly quit or transfer. It happens more than you think." "You're suggesting someone stole your baby and sold him to an adoption agency?" Dennis asked, his skepticism clear. "I'm not suggesting anything," Meredith replied. "I'm telling you that my baby supposedly died at 3:52 a.m. in Ward 3B at Riverside General. Your daughter received a baby for emergency adoption at 4:15 a.m. from the same ward. The baby was 2 days old, exactly how old mine would have been. Born on March 16th, same as mine. And he looks exactly like my father, has our family birthmark, and even loves dinosaurs like every male in my family has been obsessed with since they could walk." The other parents were openly staring now. Someone was recording on their phone. The birthday party had become a crime scene, and my son was the evidence. I stood there holding Ethan's hand while 20 pairs of eyes watched us, waiting to see what I would do. The rational part of my brain said to call the police, have this woman removed, protect my son from this insanity. But the mother in me, the part that would die for Ethan without hesitation, whispered a terrible question. What if she's right? "Everyone, I think the party's over," I announced, my voice surprisingly steady. "Thank you all for coming. We'll reschedule the cake." Parents started gathering their children, shooting concerned glances between Meredith and me. A few looked like they wanted to stay and watch the drama unfold, but Vera started ushering them toward the parking lot with practiced efficiency. "Sarah, what are you doing?" Dennis asked, his hand on my shoulder. "I'm going to find out the truth," I said, then looked directly at Meredith. "If you really believe Ethan is your son, then we need proof. Real proof, not just photos and coincidences." "DNA test," she said immediately. "I'll do it right now, today." "Mommy, what's happening?" Ethan tugged on my shirt. "Why is everyone leaving?" "We didn't even do presents." I knelt down and took his face in my hands. "Baby, sometimes grown-ups have to figure out complicated things. We'll do presents at home, okay? Just you, me, Grandpa, and Aunt V." "And the sad lady?" he asked, looking at Meredith. "No, sweetheart, not today." I stood and faced Meredith again. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave now. Tomorrow morning, we'll meet at Riverside General. We'll do a DNA test through proper channels. If you're wrong about this, and you are wrong, you never contact us again. Understood?" "And if I'm right?" she asked. The question hung in the air like a loaded gun. If she was right, everything I knew about my son's adoption was a lie. If she was right, I had been raising a stolen child for 5 years. If she was right, the little boy I loved more than life itself had a mother who'd been mourning him since the day he was born. "Then we'll deal with that if it happens," I said. Meredith nodded and pulled out a business card. "I'm a veterinarian at Riverside Animal Hospital. My cell's on there. What time tomorrow?" 9 a.m., main entrance. She looked at Ethan one more time, her face crumpling again. "Happy birthday," she whispered, then turned and walked away. The moment she was gone, my legs nearly gave out. Dennis caught me. guided me to a bench while Vera distracted Ethan with leftover balloons. "This is insane," Dennis said. "You don't owe that woman anything. She could be mentally ill, fixated on Ethan for some reason." "Dad, you saw the photos, the timeline. What if something did happen at that hospital?" "Then that's not your fault. You adopted him legally. You've been his mother for 5 years. But if she never gave him up, if someone took him from her, then every night I've sung him to sleep, she's been crying for a baby she thinks is dead." That night, after Ethan finally crashed from his sugar high and birthday excitement, I sat in his room watching him sleep. He had kicked off his dinosaur blanket like always, one arm flung above his head, the other clutching his stuffed elephant. I could see the birthmark behind his ear, that little crescent moon I'd kissed 1,000 times. I pulled out my adoption file from the lockbox in my closet. Everything looked legitimate. Signed papers, official seals, Janet's contact information. But now I was seeing things I hadn't noticed before. The birth mother's signature was just a scribble, barely legible. The timestamps were odd, everything processed remarkably fast for a middle-of-the-night emergency. And there was no information about the birth mother at all, just a note that she had requested complete anonymity. Vera found me at 3 a.m., surrounded by papers, my laptop open to articles about hospital fraud and illegal adoptions. "Find anything?" she asked, handing me a cup of coffee. There was a nurse at Riverside General named Patricia Crenshaw. She worked in Ward 3B during the time Ethan was born. She was fired 6 months later, but the reason isn't public record. "That doesn't mean anything necessarily." "No, but look at this." I showed her my screen. 7 families have filed complaints about irregularities with adoptions from Riverside General between 2018 and 2019. All emergency placements, all through private agencies, all from Ward 3B. Vera sat down hard. "Sarah, what have you gotten into?" "I don't know, but I'm going to find out." The next morning, I dressed Ethan in his favorite outfit, the one with the pocket for his toy cars. I told him we were going to the hospital for a special checkup, just to make sure he was growing big and strong like a T-Rex. He didn't question it. 5-year-olds trust their mothers completely, and that trust felt like a weight on my chest as we drove. Meredith was already there when we arrived, standing by the information desk with a folder thick with papers. She looked like she hadn't slept either, her face pale but determined. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly. "I'm not doing this for you," I replied, holding Ethan's hand tighter. "I'm doing it because I need to know the truth." We walked together toward the lab, 3 people bound by the possibility of a terrible truth, about to open a door that could never be closed again. 3 days of waiting felt like 3 years. I didn't sleep, barely ate, and jumped every time my phone rang. Ethan kept asking why I was sad, and I had to pretend everything was normal while my world teetered on the edge of collapse. When Dr. Kepler finally called, his voice was careful, professional. "Ms. Martinez, could you come to my office? Ms. Wilson is already here. We need to discuss the results in person." I dropped Ethan at Vera's house, telling him Aunt V had a surprise movie day planned. He bounced out of the car, oblivious to the fact that his entire life might change in the next hour. Vera squeezed my hand through the window. "Whatever happens, you're his mother, remember that." The drive to the hospital felt both endless and too quick. My hands shook as I parked, as I walked through the sliding doors, as I pressed the elevator button for the 3rd floor. Each step felt like walking toward a verdict I wasn't ready to hear. Meredith was sitting in Dr. Kepler's office, her hands folded so tightly, her knuckles were white. She looked up when I entered, and we just stared at each other for a moment, 2 mothers afraid of the truth. Dr. Kepler closed the door and sat behind his desk. He had a folder in front of him, several papers spread out. His face was grave, and I knew before he said anything that our lives were about to shatter. "I ran the test twice to be certain," he began. "The DNA is conclusive. Meredith Wilson is Ethan's biological mother. The match is 99.97%. The room tilted. I gripped the arms of my chair as my legs went numb. Meredith made a sound like she'd been punched, a gasp that turned into a sob. She covered her face with her hands, her whole body shaking. "My baby," she kept saying. "My baby's alive. He's alive." But Dr. Kepler wasn't done. He pulled out another document, his expression even more serious. Ms. Martinez, Ms. Wilson, what I'm about to show you is part of an ongoing investigation. After our initial test, I felt obligated to check the hospital records from March 2019. He turned his computer screen toward us. It showed security footage from 5 years ago, grainy but clear enough. A woman in scrubs was wheeling a bassinet down a hallway. The timestamp read, March 16th, 2019, 4:08 a.m. This is Patricia Crenshaw. She was a senior nurse in Ward 3B. Notice the direction she's walking. She's taking a baby from the delivery ward to the emergency adoption intake office. He clicked to another image. Same woman, same hallway, but now she was talking to someone, just out of frame, handling paperwork. This is 17 minutes after Ms. Wilson's son was declared dead. But here's the problem. There were no other births in Ward 3B that night. The only baby in that ward was yours, Ms. Wilson. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. You're saying she stole him. She took a baby from his mother and just handed him over for adoption. It's worse than that, Dr. Kepler said. He pulled out a printed report. Patricia Crenshaw was fired 6 months later when discrepancies were found in medication inventory. But that investigation led to something bigger. She had been taking babies from vulnerable mothers, mostly young, single women with no family support, telling them their babies had died, then selling them to private adoption agencies. Selling them? Meredith's voice was barely a whisper. For approximately $50,000 per child, the agencies thought they were paying legitimate processing fees for emergency placements. They had no idea the babies were stolen. How many? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. We've confirmed 7 cases so far. There may be more. 7 families destroyed, 7 mothers who mourned children that were alive, 7 adoptive parents who had no idea they were raising stolen babies. Bright Horizons had no idea, Dr. Kepler continued. They were victims too. Crenshaw had created elaborate fake documentation. Birth mother, consent forms, medical records, everything needed to make it look legitimate. Where is she now? Meredith asked, and there was steel in her voice. She was arrested 6 months ago when the first family came forward. She's currently awaiting trial on multiple charges, including kidnapping, fraud, and human trafficking. I thought about Janet from the adoption agency, how frazzled she'd seemed that night. Had she suspected something was wrong, or was she just overwhelmed by the late-night emergency placement? What happens now, I asked, though the question felt impossible. Legally, I mean, I adopted Ethan in good faith. I have papers. Papers based on fraud, Meredith said, turning to me. He's my son. You've had 5 years with him that I should have had. I didn't know, I said, tears finally coming. I swear to God I didn't know. I thought I was giving a home to a baby who needed one. But he didn't need one. He had me. I wanted him. I loved him before he was even born. Dr. Kepler intervened gently. This is a legal matter that will need to be handled by the courts, but I need you both to understand something. Ethan has been with Ms. Martinez for 5 years. She's the only mother he knows. Any decisions made need to prioritize his well-being. His well-being? Meredith stood up, pacing now. What about my well-being? I've spent 5 years in therapy, 5 years on antidepressants, 5 years visiting an empty grave on his birthday. I attempted suicide twice because the grief was unbearable. I stood too, my maternal instincts flaring despite everything. I'm sorry for your pain. I truly am. But Ethan is happy. He's loved. He has a home, a family, friends. You can't just rip him away from everything he knows. You mean rip him away like he was ripped from me? We stood there facing each other. 2 mothers with equal claim to love, unequal claim to law, and no idea how to move forward without destroying the little boy we both wanted to protect. 6 months later, I stood in a courtroom holding Ethan's hand while a judge decided our fate. The media had picked up the story, calling it the Riverside Hospital baby theft scandal. 7 families just like ours, all fighting to figure out how to love children caught between 2 worlds. The judge's decision came down on a Thursday afternoon. I remember because Ethan had soccer practice that day, and I was worried we'd be late. Funny how your brain focuses on normal things when your world is falling apart. This court recognizes the unprecedented nature of this case, Judge Harrison said, looking between Meredith and me. We have a biological mother who was criminally deprived of her child, and an adoptive mother who has raised that child in good faith for 5 years. But most importantly, we have a 5-year-old boy whose needs must come first. She continued, the court orders joint custody with a gradual transition period. Ms. Martinez will retain primary physical custody initially, with Ms. Wilson having supervised visits that will gradually increase. Both parties will attend mandatory family counseling to facilitate this transition. The goal is not to choose between mothers, but to give Ethan the love and support of both. Meredith broke down crying. I did too. It wasn't what either of us wanted, but it was what Ethan needed. The first visit was awkward beyond words. Ethan clung to me, confused about why he had to spend time with this stranger. But Meredith was patient. She brought dinosaur books, played on the floor with him, let him set the pace. She never once said, I'm your real mom, or tried to turn him against me. She just loved him quietly, consistently, without demands. 3 weeks in, Ethan asked me, why does Miss Meredith cry when she looks at me? I could have lied, made something up, but our therapist had said honesty in age-appropriate doses was best, because she loves you very much and she missed you for a long time. Like when you missed me when I went to Grandpa's for the weekend. Yes, baby, but for much, much longer. It took 4 months before Ethan called her mom for the first time. He'd fallen off his bike at the park during one of their visits, skinned his knee pretty bad. Meredith scooped him up, cleaned the wound, kissed it better, and he just looked at her and said, thanks, Mom. She looked at me over his head, tears streaming down her face, and mouthed, thank you. That's when I knew we could make this work. Patricia Crenshaw got 25 years in prison. The 7 families she destroyed are still picking up the pieces, each finding their own way forward. Some biological parents got full custody back. Others, like us, found a middle ground. One family fell apart entirely, the adoptive parents unable to handle the truth, the biological mother too damaged by grief to parent. There are no clean endings in a story like this. Today, Ethan is 6.5. He has 2 moms and he'll tell anyone who asks about it. I'm special, he says. I got lost when I was a baby, but I had one mom who found me and took care of me, and another mom who never stopped looking for me. Now I have both. We celebrate his birthday twice now. Once on March 16th, his actual birthday, with both families together. And once on May 20th, the day I brought him home, which we call his Finding Day. Meredith suggested that. She understood that my love for him started that day, and it deserved to be honored. Vera was right when she said I'm still his mother, but Meredith is too. We text each other about his school events, share photos, coordinate Halloween costumes. When he's sick, we both show up with soup. When he scores a goal at soccer, we both cheer from the sidelines. We're not friends exactly, but we're something more important. We're Ethan's moms. The truth is, love isn't about ownership. It's not about who has the legal right or the biological connection. It's about showing up day after day, putting a child's needs before your own heart. Meredith showed me grace by sharing him with the only mother he'd ever known. I showed her grace by sharing him with the mother he should have always known. Some people call me a hero for sharing custody. Others say I'm a fool for not fighting harder. But when Ethan wraps his arms around my neck and says, I love you, Mama, then runs to Meredith and says, I love you too, Mommy, I know we made the right choice. Patricia Crenshaw stole more than babies. She stole first words, first steps, first days of school. She stole bedtime stories and morning cuddles and all those irreplaceable moments. But she didn't steal our ability to love. She didn't steal our capacity to heal. And she didn't steal Ethan's chance to be loved by everyone who should have been loving him all along. That's the thing about truth. It doesn't always set you free. Sometimes it breaks you apart first. But if you're lucky, if you're brave, if you put love before law and child before self, you can build something beautiful from the pieces. Now, when people ask about our family, I tell them the truth. We're the family that was lost and found, broken and rebuilt, divided and multiplied. We're proof that mother's love isn't diminished when shared. It's doubled. We're evidence that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you can lead to a grace you never knew existed. Ethan asked me last week if I wished none of this had happened, if I wished Meredith had never shown up at his party. I told him the truth. No, baby, because you deserve all the love in the world, and now you have it. He thought about that for a minute, then said, I'm the luckiest kid ever. I have 2 moms who love me more than dinosaurs love roaring. And really, what more could any child need? If this story touched your heart or opened your eyes to the complexities of love and family, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your comments mean the world to me, and I read every single one. What would you have done in this situation? How would you handle finding out a truth this devastating? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to hear more real, raw stories about families, love, and the impossible choices we sometimes have to make, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss a story. Remember, sometimes the most broken families become the strongest ones, and sometimes having 2 mothers isn't about dividing love, it's about multiplying it. Until next time, hold your loved ones close and remember that family isn't always about blood, but it's always about showing up.